Stop being an enemy to your own future.
We don't know how and where we can improve if we don't have an idea of the current state.
We want to stay in love with the problem.
That's what we've done.
That's what we did.
Forever. Everywhere.
Making construction cool again.
That happens everywhere. Most of the time, people can't answer that question.
Prefab is not always cheaper. Is that what you're getting at? Kind of?
No, I'm going to come across the table and...
Welcome to the Beyond the Breaker podcast.
In some ways, my whole career so far, I have just been both feet deep in the water of industrialized construction. I do have a little bit of exposure to, it's not automotive manufacturing, but golf car manufacturing as an intern. So I spent a year doing that, got exposure to a lot of the, manufacturing ways of doing things, but really have been just diving into industrialized construction for the last, I guess 6 years.
And with ICG in your current role, what's a brief day in the life of Allison?
Yeah, so...
What is it you do here?
Like many people in construction, I wear different hats depending on the day, but I would say there's kind of two main hats that I wear. And one is delivering our work to our customers, so helping them solve their problems directly. So how can they create a manufacturing line for a product that they want it to be, a prefab component, something that's shipped to the site and installed. So how can we optimize that, get them set up? And then the other hat that I wear is really on product development, trying to figure out our own processes within ICG so that we can deliver solutions as products to our customers to enable them, give them the capability to do things that we didn't really think was going to be expected in the construction industry. So we can kind of dive into that. How can we empower this industry, the people in this industry, to solve some of these more technical problems, things that we would associate with process engineering, industrial engineering. So how can we create a tool for them so that they can design a line themselves?
Just one of the other things that Allison is doing, and just about this, about what's happening in the industry, we would say industrialized construction is the application of manufacturing methods and techniques to the built environment. And so we're going to talk a lot about what are the unique skills that need to happen. But at the same time, as we're doing this and we're bringing in all these lean manufacturing is really our credo. While we're bringing in all of these methods and techniques, we also have this other element that's coming in, which is, the ability to really have data insights with AI and other things. So one of the other things that Allison's helping with that I'm sure is of interest to everybody is that we consider ourselves a frontier firm. We're a little over 2 years old, and we want to decouple labor from growth in the industry. We want to do the same thing for us because we want to redefine excellence in the built environment. And so we can't do that, just adding people. We need to be able to scale these things. So Allison is really great at data insights and structuring data. It's a big effort for us right now is to, create a data backbone so that we can turn data into insights with AI and other applications. So, that's another big thing about what we're working on. I'm sure everybody's got some interest around that.
Allison, I'm going to ask you to wear your salesman or saleswoman hat now. Nick is actually wearing a hat. But when you talk about products, let's dive into that. What does ICG consider a product that they're delivering to a customer, to an end user here? What are your products? What's the best one you got? The second best one? So go down the list.
It's interesting. So we are early, I would say, in our product development journey. So there are a lot of pain points that we can relate to when it comes to like construction companies trying to productize what they offer. But more recently, I feel like I've come across kind of a strong opinion of a definition of what a product is.
Let's hear it. And
it is the ability to deliver an increment of value to a customer. So however that needs to be packaged, if you are willing to pay for something that I can offer and it creates value for you, it solves a pain point, a problem for you, then I'd consider that to be a product.
Got it.
So just in a kind of high level, simple way of framing that. So for us, second part of your question, what is our main product right now? That's the Industrialized Construction Maturity Assessment, the ICMA. That's been our strongest product for a while now, but we are actively trying to understand what our customers' pain points are in this industry and, trying to move towards industrialized construction. And so we are actively developing products around those pain points.
Can both of you please dive into that ICMA a little bit more? What are some of the components with that? Why are they part of that? People have heard the word assessment before, but define it a little bit for you guys and that tool, please.
Yeah, so it's a measurement tool. It's a measurement of maturity. So I'll kind of quickly go through kind of the structure of it. So our ICMA has 6 disciplines. So we're trying to cover all aspects of an organization and not just, focus on manufacturing per se. So we're covering design, production, which we consider to be what's happening in an air-conditioned building, but also what's happening on the construction site. Where are we creating value for our end customer or whoever the company is that we're assessing? Cover supply chain, operational excellence, strategy within the organization. And we're looking at all areas. And so across these disciplines, there are 57 topics. And so we come in, we spend a week assessing a company, talking to everyone. We don't just want the leadership. Yes, we do want to talk to leadership. We want to understand what's their vision for the organization, but we want to talk to everyone that's, on the shop floor. Do they have the same vision? Is that being cascaded down to them? Do they understand what their role is every day in making sure that the company is successful? So we're really looking under the hood is what we say oftentimes. And we have really honest conversations with people. What are their pain points? And so yeah, we're measuring maturity. And I think the reason that this matters is we don't know how and where we can improve if we don't have an idea of the current state. So we need to measure the current state, and then depending on what our goals are, create a plan, a path forward, so that, now we know how far we need to go to get to our future state, ideally. Anything you want to add?
No, you nailed it.
Do you ask for the podcasters input when you go to companies? Or,
This might be the quietest Nick has ever been.
I have a question for Nick, actually. So you get these measurements, right? You talk to the company as a whole. Turning that around, what does that look like? I'm the company that just got assessed. You measured everything you could. What can I expect back from my assessment?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, what you can expect back is we'll take what we hear from leadership and others and say, this is what we want to achieve. And we want to understand, for us, a lean-ism would be that we want to stay in love with the problem. So what is it that we're trying to solve? Mm-hmm. And then we use those 57 topics within the ICMA to measure against those things, that we can give you very specific recommendations for what can improve. And if I go from one level to the next, what will that mean to the organization? What will happen to my productivity? Will I drive my labor per assembly down? Will my rate of defect go down? Will I decrease the amount of inventory I have? Because all those things mean money and customer satisfaction. You're also going to hear some things that you just wouldn't hear, because when we go out and speak with people, we hear things that the rest of the company just doesn't hear. And so we're pretty good at this because we've been doing it for a while, but we do build trust within the rank and file. And it's almost hard to even leave rather than them saying I'm not going to tell those people. But we hear things as an example, we'll hear from people in the prefab or the manufacturing operation, my rate of defect is 0.001. I'm like, wow, that's fantastic. And then we go out in the field and we say, when you get a delivery, how often is there a defect on the load? And they'll say, every single time.
Dang
I'm
it.
oh my God.
Feels like a bit of a disconnect there.
So we need to, that's why, we say we are a loving bucket of cold water, because we're going to give you some of the truths. And then we can measure that against your peer group. So you can understand against electricians my size, how is my rate of defect compared to that? And, understanding, where do you want to be? Do you want to be best in class? Do you want to be in the top quartile? Where do you want to be? So it's all just measuring these things against what the organization wants to do and giving them a clear indications about what are the recommendations to get to the next level. And the next thing that Allison's really working on is how do we how do we turn those recommendations into action? So how can we give people a little bit more of a self roadmap about how they can improve? Because it's hard for us to always do it. I mean,
well, because you can't be there doing the work with them or for them, right alongside them.
Right.
You can only be one place at one time. So that roadmap.
Yeah, the roadmap. I love it. Yeah.
So
come help me.
Maturity assessment. How far out are you projecting these things? What does this roadmap look like? Like, how far can you take it for a company?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure there's follow-up, like you talked about. Really, your product is a solution to something that I need, and continually going forward, that's delivering on the product.
Yeah.
What is like the first range of time frame?
Yep.
And then what's it look like after that?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of plug in, I guess this really is me putting my saleswoman
There we
hat
go.
on. So we have a developer who works on our team, and we've actually developed an app, so our ICMA client portal, and happy to share a demo with anyone who's interested in that. But essentially, we provide recommendations through this application on our website. And so it is a list of, here's where you need to start. Here are the priority A things that you need to work through. Here's what the actual recommendation is. And we try to always tie that back to the organization's goals and targets. So this is why it matters for you specifically. So we are customizing it for them. And this roadmap essentially is something that they always have access to. And I guess, the ideal scenario is that we come back and we do an assessment again after 6 months, 1 year, and let's see how far did they move the needle towards their target. Were they able to achieve everything that we recommended to them in that time frame? A lot of these things.
Does that ever happen? Do they ever actually get everything done in that short time frame?
I don't think the industry's at a point yet where all of that can happen in 6 months. Because I mean, these are huge boulders that people have to move.
Yeah.
So it's very foundational. But yeah, so they have access to this all the time.
Huh.
And yeah.
So if I'm a company that says I want to be $1 billion company in the next 5 years, I made the window. You don't make the window. It's kind of based on what that company's goals are.
Yeah, and we can tell you if that's realistic or not based upon your maturity and like your ability to improve.
Yeah.
But I would say that talking about those timeframes, 6 months would be a very typical time frame for us, and that would be the amount of time to get going what we would call a model line. And the model line is one production line that we can make an example of good manufacturing. And then we want to be able to create some strength within the organization so that they can spread it horizontally to other production lines.
So if we liked making this widget and you helped us make this widget,
yes,
that's an extra special sprocket on that one line, and we've optimized that, and you've helped us understand our current quality, et cetera. Use that as an example, and then just build on that within the organization.
And then, getting down to like more of a nitty gritty type of thing, like, okay, what can we be doing right now? Well, we've been spending a lot of time in understanding what are the skills that people need. So a skills matrix is something that you would see everywhere in mature manufacturing. You don't see it anywhere where we go. But so seeing these, there's a few hallmarks of good manufacturing that we want to help people with. We want them to have the right skills. So do you know how to set up a production system? Do you know how to define the work? Do you know how to balance the labor? Do you know how to do these things? And people think that they know how to do them, but we want to show them what that gap is. So the skills matrix has what's the current condition, what's the target condition. We're always working on a current and a target. You have to know what the current is, and you have to know what the target is and what it will mean to the organization. So people being able to see where they are in the skills matrix gives them some aspiration to get to the next level. We can call this operator 1, operator 2. Different levels can be associated with this, a process engineer, a quality engineer. And then we're working on, what does this mean for the line then? How would we take this to other areas of the organization? Another area that I really want to work on is estimating too. It's another skill gap that we see when we do our ICMAs. We say like, you have some products, but your estimators are still doing full quantity takeoffs on a product that you have. So say you guys have a load center and it's got all the components in it, but your estimators are taking off every breaker, every bit of wire, the chassis, everything they're taking off. And then they say, oh, I don't want to buy that prefab assembly from you because I can buy the breaker cheaper. I can buy this cheaper. I can buy that. You're not looking at the whole system. So we give people feedback like, stop being an enemy to your own future. So, tell, your estimators, they're not doing a full quantity takeoff on a generator. They're not taking off all the different breakers and wires within it. And they're going back to Caterpillar and saying, I can buy that generator. I can do that cheaper. Caterpillar would be like, later, go for it. So we have to adopt that same mentality of, what does it mean to be a product company, a product driven company? And then how do we start acting in that way?
I like how you tied that into something that we already do. We already know. We have that good behavior of when it's a gen set, we go spec it and we buy it. We don't go nitpick every little tiny thing about it. We're buying an assembly.
Right.
So, to be able for us then to make that leap to treat ourselves that way, pretty natural place to go. Love that.
Prefab is not always cheaper. Is that what you're getting at? Kind of.
No, I'm going to come across the table and put my hands around your throat, Andrew. I don't know. I mean,
you hear it.
I just have, yeah. Oh, okay. You're baiting me.
No,
I was not. I was just saying, I think what I heard there and I totally agree is like, if you're Caterpillar and the example you use, like, oh, I can buy this cheaper. I can buy all that cheaper. I can put it all together. Like, go for it.
Yeah.
Right. Good luck.
Yeah, I would say, for like a renovation or something like that, we have very restricted access. You might have to bring up every piece because the elevator is so small, you can't hold it. You can't put up a hoist on the outside of the building. Like, there's just going to be some restrictions. But I would say, by and large, I'm willing to bet my paycheck that a prefab assembly is always going to be cheaper. It's going to make the work better. Even if we're doing simple things like kitting, they're always going to make things better for the end user. I mean, that's our goal, is to reduce burden on the person in the field. That's the number one goal, is to look for overburden in the field. And that stuff is just left, right, and center.
Overall, you'll put your money that it's cheaper.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
considering everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to be holistic.
No fine
the
print.
Entire burden.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the part that people forget about a lot is the labor cost. It's not just, what we're paying our vendors and suppliers, but it's also the cost to make the thing. So if we can make, load centers consistently with the same labor with maybe not quite as high skill, but in a controlled environment, then the labor cost savings on that outweighs some of these material costs. And then the other thing to keep in mind is when you start getting into supply chain management, strategic relationships with suppliers, you can start buying these standard components at higher quantities, get much more competitive pricing on it. So yeah, it's always a win in that scenario. Whenever we are looking at everything, the system, it's not just what's happening in one room. It's the whole system that has to be working together to really recognize those gains.
One of the things that we brought up a little bit earlier was about some of the data associated with what we're doing, how we're doing it. And data is something that gets kind of thrown around and maybe not defined real well. But maybe tuck into a little bit. What do you guys see as some of the data that we need to be tracking and maybe managing within that system, that holistic systemic approach that you guys are talking about?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I love data. I am always finding a way to use data, and just because we need a way to make informed decisions, right? So I would say that data is a measurement, something we can collect so that we can make educated decisions in real time. And it should point us towards what our goals are, and hold us accountable to what our goals and targets are. And so I think kind of right now, two things really come to mind about what data we need in this industry. So one, going back to what I was just saying about labor cost, in order to calculate labor cost, we need to understand how much labor we're actually using to do things. And then second, whatever data we can collect to understand, are we successful right now, today, in this moment? Are we on track or are we behind? And so, really, I think that's just about schedule, aligning ourselves to the schedules that we've committed to. So yeah, I think those are, these are fresh data points that, we've been using a lot lately.
Yeah. I mean, another data point that we would just always want to have is like, what is the takt time? So the takt time is this pulse, right? What is the rate at which we need to produce things? And we don't know that. And without that, then we're just We're just putting people on a production line to do something and tell them to go as fast as hell. And you know what? We need to get that thing out by like kind of Friday. Can you have that done by Friday? And so we're trying to get away from that. So understanding what does the data tell us? What's in our pipeline? What are the products that we need to make? Which ones are we going to send down the production line? And then what does that rate of demand tell us? And once we know what the takt time is, then we can design a line that will produce within that, and we can balance it too. So those are some of the big skills. I think you should talk more about the skills that people need to understand the work content, to balance the line. I want to hear from you. What are those things what are these very specific skills that we're asking people to learn?
Yeah. So, there's kind of a high level process of how we get to what Nick just described. The first thing you need to understand is, what is your demand? If we don't know what our demand is in the next year, how can we plan accordingly? What should that pulse be? So the first kind of skill that we oftentimes are teaching people whenever we engage with them for our model line work is teaching them how to measure their demand. So it's really just, it also requires you to understand what your products are. So if you don't have that defined, like that's step number one. And we oftentimes have to help our customers through that. Maybe it's not perfectly defined, but we can work with them to define roughly what are their products.
Since you've been here with us for a little over a year, how many of your customers have known what the rate of demand is?
None.
0.
Yep. Yeah. So it's, and I'll give an example here.
And how transformative is it when you help them define
shocking
it?
number? Is that?
Yeah.
It's a very shocking number. You're running your business and you don't really know what the rate of demand is. How are you ever going to design a line? You're never going to get to a manufacturing future without that.
And that's like shifting that mentality. I mean, there's a lot of inertia here because that kind of, you were saying, oh yeah, and can you get that out by Friday? And we're going to push and we're going to go like crazy. Like that's what we've done.
That's what we did.
Forever. Everywhere. So like that's a big thing that we got to shift.
Yeah, it's funny. 0 customers have been able to answer that question, but it's funny because you'll say, hey, do you know what your demand is? And they're like, oh yeah, we know. I'm like, okay, what's the number? Can you please tell me the number? So that's what we're looking for. How many widgets do you need to produce over X period of time? And so then from there, we can start to understand and calculate our takt time. Okay, we've got 12 months to produce 1,000 widgets. Now we understand, okay, at a daily rate, we need to be producing this number, and we can hold ourselves accountable to that. So kind of correlating this back to data, kind of a shift for this industry is to start thinking about how we can have leading indicators of whether or not we're going to be successful instead of having to react to it after we've already failed or we've missed a deadline.
Expand a little more about the leading indicators. What are those? What do those look like to a contractor or a manufacturer? Just very broad terms, and you can dive into it because I think you both have the knowledge too.
Yeah.
But explain that to the audience.
Yeah, I'll give a specific example. I, was a quality engineer in my past life. So there are a lot of leading indicators and quality that we can use to understand if we, think that we're going to have a good product at the end of the production line or the end of the project. So a lagging indicator would be I have built, let's say, a wall frame out of CNC rolled studs, and I am, it's already built. I have my quality inspection checklist and it failed. Well, that's a lagging indicator because it's already failed. Now we have to go fix something, and that is not going to be value added time. The customer's not paying for me to go fix walls. They're paying me to make good walls. So a leading indicator in this sense would be going all the way to the CNC stud roller machine and tracking how many times does it fail a preventative maintenance check. So if we know that this machine is not performing well, then we have this leading indicator that we're probably going to have bad product coming out of the machine. So if we can address that first, then we can avoid the failed walls and having to fix the walls at the end of the production line.
Yeah, so let's pick up on a couple of those things, if is this okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the skills that we're helping people with are like equipment launch, because now we're bringing in some advanced equipment that's doing stud rolling, that's cutting strut, that's CNCing drywall. There's a bunch of equipment, robotic welding and for mechanical contractors. So these things are coming in, and perhaps we don't understand all of the requirements that the equipment's going to need. We haven't figured out how to get the language down to the machine so it can start producing. This happens with pipe benders in the electrical industry. So we see this happen. So we need to understand what those are. And another tool that Allison is particularly good at is failure modes effect analysis, the FMEA. So it's a great lean tool for understanding what are the failure modes, what would be the effect, and then how are we analyzing those things. And so, an EFMEA is for an equipment. How are we doing those things? And then also we would have this for parts. Like we would understand for every part that we have, we should have a plan for every part. So these are some of the skills that we should be building that we see are missing. And without them, then you're really just buying something because it looks nifty and you're hoping for the best. And it ends up being, we see so many robotics that are just like off in the corner. They're not really operating at the right way. So what we'd really want to do is create some stability in our processes and then build some technology and perhaps automation around it so we can scale the value rather than scaling the waste that's in the system.
Yeah, and do all of that, identify what the risks are that are associated with these efforts and then find ways to manage those risks. That's a kind of a way to sum that up.
We talked about the takt time. When you talk about then below the takt time, we have developed a process that has a cycle time that can be below the takt time. The takt time is what we need to meet, and the cycle time, what are some of the skills that a process engineer needs to have in order to understand the cycle time and then balance the labor?
Yeah, so some of the skills involved with that is, obviously you need to know what work content needs to happen, but be able to break that up into stations, which that sounds pretty straightforward, but there is a lot that goes into it because you need to understand what are some predecessor tasks and successor tasks. And so we have a tool, we call it the line structure document. I know we've talked about coming up with a prettier name for it than that.
It's a very functional name, Nick.
Is there an acronym for that one?
It's LSD.
Not a good number. Okay, fair enough.
So that's really the start of it. And all that shows you is, okay, here's all the tasks we need to do. But once you've identified the task, you need to understand how long the tasks take. So that's where time motion studies comes into play. And this doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes I think we try to overcomplicate things that can be really simple. It's just going out with a stopwatch, a piece of paper and a pen and writing down what's happening. Are we following the process? Are we adding value the whole time? If we're not, why did we stop? Why are we walking 20 feet to go pick up a tool that we need 10 times a day? So just understanding that and then taking that time motion study data, calculating what the cycle time is for that station and all the tasks that need to happen and comparing that to your takt time. If it takes you, longer than your takt time, you are never going to hit your production throughput targets and there's a problem. And so you've just highlighted that you need to go and address that. So, move the tool that's needed 10 times a day closer to the person so that they don't have to walk to get it. And maybe that something as simple as that reduces your cycle time so that you are producing within your takt time. And this would be a lot easier to explain with a whiteboard behind me because we usually use charts.
Draw on that.
For part 3, we're going to get one of those, but you have to wear a lab coat.
So, yeah, that's totally fine. But yeah, so we use something, it's called a Yamazumi, and this comes from manufacturing, but it's essentially trying to balance the work. Identify where the work is not balanced. So oftentimes with our customers, what we see is one station, they're really working 25% of the day because they don't have enough scope in their station. Compared to the station in front of them, they might have 2 days worth of work to do in 1 day's time. So that work is not balanced. So how can we shift things around so that everyone has this equally distributed workload and then they're all set up for success so that they can hit their takt time and hit their throughput?
Those systems and tools that you're talking about, I'm listening to you talk through that and I can see how that applies to some of our own manufacturing processes. I think that at times we do that really well. But then there comes this piece of we had a good idea, we wrote it down, we measured things, we have a plan. Maybe we even got an ICMA or something like that. Discipline is next. We have to do the thing consistently and we got to be honest with ourselves. And watching different teams over the years, mostly on the construction side, but a little bit on the manufacturing side, it seems like discipline is such a hard thing to keep there. And I don't mean managers going and browbeating people.
Sure.
I mean like the individual saying, I will be disciplined about my task. I will do it the same. I will record the same. And I understand how it ties into the company vision. How do you guys handle and support creating that discipline in organizations as they kind of move through their own maturity and problem solving, line optimization? How do you support that?
Yeah, I mean, you need to have the standard work document. So the standard work tells you, job one, the standard work tells you what you should be doing. These are the steps. And then the work instructions tell you how it should be done. And so that's what we want the operator to be referring to. What are the actual steps and how do I do them? And it can include the amount of time it should take. And from that, and from the balanced labor chart, then we can be making expectations for hour by hour tracking. So we know in hour one, how much should we track? We should have 10 units done. Did we hit it or not? And we don't go there to browbeat, but we go there because the operator knows why that didn't happen. The tool was wrong. The information was wrong. The material was defective. They'll be able to tell us. They'll have the ideas. This is all about, an idea-driven organization. So if they understand why they're doing something and we give them this ability to see and understand the system that they work in because we're making this a visual management system, then they're going to give us the feedback that we want. So, we're going to expect that we're going to get scores of ideas per person rather than shut up and do your job.
Sure.
Your job is actually to make the work better is really what the job ends up being. So those are the things. And that would all just, we kind of just call this all the daily management system. This is the way that we're managing it's kind of the compact between management and the frontline force. I need this to happen in order for the business to be successful. I can do this if you give me these things. And so we come together and have a much more useful conversation if we have these elements that are already present. Now, in traditional construction, we don't have work instructions. We have drawings. And we expect the worker to interpret them because they've been taught by Andrew how to do it. Mm-hmm. And so the difference is that we're much more documented about what we're trying to do, and then we can elevate it to the next level. So that's what we're looking for is how can we get more ideas per person that are adding value to the organization? And it happens big time in these types of environments. So it is not the end of innovation. It's the beginning of it. It's the end of solving the same problem over and over again.
Same person solving it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Allison, when you go and visit clients and you talk to them and observe some of the processes and sometimes lack thereof that they might have, what are the things that are getting in the way? Like, Nick, what you just described, like, we should just be doing that. That should be normal. But somehow it's not. So do you have maybe any observations about like common things that you're seeing or root causes for why we aren't behaving that way already?
Yeah, so I think it really does come down to setting expectations, and it's hard to hold people accountable to things that you haven't set an expectation for. And so actually, one of my favorite questions to ask whenever it's my first time visiting a client, love doing this as part of the ICMA too. I love to go on the shop floor and ask people, hey, how do you know when you leave today if you've had a good day or a bad day? How do you know if you did a decent job today? And most of the time people just say, well, I work my shift and I go home. But there's no signal to them to know whether or not they've met the expectation that day or not. And so I think, that happens everywhere. Most of the time people can't answer that question. And so I think it comes down to someone's got to sit down, probably not one person, probably a group of people, leadership most of the time. They've got to sit down and have these conversations. What are the goals? What are the targets? Figure out the demand, understand what our attack time should be, our throughput every day, what should that be? And then communicate that to everyone who plays a role in everyone being successful on that target every single day. And this shouldn't have to be a huge lift, a manual effort every day to maintain this. We should create good processes that help to facilitate this accountability, but also communicating what everyone's expectation is on a daily basis.
Yeah, on the factory floor, there's a basic number of KPIs that we're looking for. I mean, we're looking, people can vary this, but SKU dip is a good one. We want to know safety, quality, delivery, inventory, and productivity. How do we stack up against those things? And each one of those letters can have more than one thing that we measure, but that's what we're saying. At the end of the day, how do we do against those measures? And people don't make those things visible. They're just kind of like anecdotal, and we talk about them with the morning stretch and flex. So those are the things that we're trying to extinguish. I think another reason that people have a hard time making this shift is just because of the mindset. The mindset in the field is a batch production. We have a wing and we do a wing at a time. We have an electrical room, we do an electrical room. But when we move into the factory floor, we really want to move to single piece flow, where the work is moving station by station. And when it shows up in the next station, the tooling is set for that and only that. And we know exactly what should be happening in that station. So the variability that happens on the job site is so great that it becomes harder to do that. But if you bring that batching mindset into the factory, that's where most people fail. They're like, no, that's what we're going to do. We batch these things. And you can't tell me that, I'm not going to be faster than that. I'm like, not only can I tell you that, we've heard earlier, I'm going to bet my paycheck on it.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about it now from ICG's point, but also from a company. There is a communication stream to this all. There's a buying component of it. Data is one thing, and data tells a great story. Not everybody believes the stories they see or hear. What is your approach with that, or how can a company embrace what the communication need is to the rest of the company to say this is the right path. We need to be doing this, and here's where it can take us. What do you see as the common communication stream for that? Or I guess maybe what do you guys pitch? And it's kind of up to, what do you say we recommend this? Use it as you like.
Yeah, so I think there's not one answer for that. And I think that you have to understand who you are communicating this to and what they need to hear. So someone on the shop floor, they may need to hear, explain why. How is this actually, give me proof that this is actually going to improve my job every day. Give them a case study, show them the math. Someone who is a manager of a team of engineers or architects, they may need this to be communicated in a different way. And so this might not be an answer you but I think you have to understand what are their pain points, what are their frustrations, and tie that in, because ultimately it should be benefiting everybody, right?
Mm-hmm. I think you answered extremely well. We're going to do an assessment. Here's what we think you need. And here's who needs this. Here's who needs that. Here, you piece it apart to say, all of these things combined together, now you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, you're talking about how do we create alignment in the organization that this is the future? And so one way to do that is by cascading the KPIs. So what are the key performance indicators and how are we cascading that? So a customer said to us, I want 25% more market share with the same headcount I have right now. How can I do that? And so we say, okay, well, here are the barriers to that. And then, so what does it mean for your design team? What does it mean for your sales team? And everybody should know exactly how they're contributing to that. And then we have to make that visual. So it just can't be something we're checking every quarter. We want these leading indicators. We want to figure out what are the leading indicators for that happening. And I would say if we're going to engage in visual management, then both of those words need to be active. It needs to be visual and we can manage from it. So it needs to have that mix of leading indicators and lagging indicators. We do like lagging indicators, but we want leading indicators too. So that's what I'd be looking for.
And it's a really good question because we see people struggle with this constantly. I think, that's one of the top opportunities out there is how do we get everybody on board with the same plan?
And in creating that sort of alignment, on one hand, that's about culture, that's about communication from leadership and talking and making very clear, here's our goal. The one that you said, I want 25% more market share without moving the headcount. That's pretty clear. That's pretty reasonably defined. And so then meeting those people where they are, and Andrew, your group needs to do this, and Allison, your group needs to do that. It's so simple to say it out loud like that in these small examples, but man, you got to meet people where they are.
You do.
Right. And help them understand the value from their own department or their own position.
Yeah. Ben, I'm really interested in this from your perspective, because one of the things that we're interested in bringing more to our client base is real dynamic tracking of these things. So, my goal is to have telemetry. If we wanted track where the improvement's happening and are we getting closer to those KPIs? Then how are we doing that? And I have a sense that you're doing a really good job with this. So I'd like to understand, how are you mapping to the different input sources within your organization? And I don't know what you call it, but I just like this term of telemetry. We can see real time what's happening, like the nurse at the nurse's station can see what's going on with the vitals. I want to know too, do I need to go attend to the patient or not? Like this is the head or behind. This is like, am I in control or out of control? These are the things I want to know all the time.
Yeah, I think, trying to be a little bit vulnerable about that. I think that there's some places that we're doing it pretty well. And I promise there are places we need to do it a whole lot better.
Where are you doing it well? Like what are the characteristics of it?
Yeah. It's going to hurt you a little bit when I say this, but it's in part treating things within the construction side of it a lot still on that job by job basis. It's not product, it's not manufacturing, but as we look at a job, and when I say that, I mean a customer has a need. They've said, here's our drawings. We want you to provide a certain scope of work and some dollars. And so we track that job and the natural life cycle that it has when it moves from A to B to C, from purchasing to operations to design, all those different handoffs and things. And so I think one of the things that we're doing is we're tracking some of our labor and understanding our capacity there. We have to look forward to understand what can business development sell such that estimating can put a number to and that we can purchase. And then we have to find labor to put that stuff in place. And that includes manufactured and stick-built things. So I think that we're doing well in understanding the human being's capacity, the labor capacity to execute those projects and at the various handoffs. One of the things that I think we're lacking on and actively developing is, how do we look into the future? How do we estimate or predict what our capacity is so that we can have some of those leading indicators and go, well, I should be selling this kind of work at this time because I'm going to be able to deliver on it. So we've got a lot of opportunity there. And if you have a magic tool that does that sort of thing, I'd love to hear about it.
Don't say it now. off the record.
But yeah, and I see that as an industry-wide thing, especially coming from a construction background as opposed to a manufacturing background. We have tremendous disconnect as an industry between those various departments. Or look at it from an owner's perspective or a GC's perspective. They've got lots of different trade partners in their supply chain that they have to manage. And boy, oh boy, sometimes that communication doesn't go well and that schedule gets mucked up and we stack trades and we miss deadlines. And, I think it's all related there.
When you were talking about insights and predicting the future, we've had success with another product, which is discrete event simulation modeling. So helping, discrete event simulation modeling. So modeling, 3D modeling of a production line. So we show what it will look like in the factory, and it's all a mathematical model. It's all just based on the math. So it forces the hygiene. So we're saying right away, like, do you have these numbers? What are the steps? Talk us through the steps. Do you have the real numbers? Like, I don't want to hear 2 guys, 4 days. Like, I really want to understand. And how can we go get that? And so it does bring light to the gap between how we think about data now and what we really need in terms of the granularity that we need to get to, like Allison was talking about. We want to go from tracking by cost codes, and in some cases, even just timesheets, which are really just cost codes. And we're trying to get down to minutes and seconds. So how do we do that? And if you do that, you can create models that are pretty stinking good. And then we can use this discrete event part, which is to say, to take it into these different models and say, what happens if my demand goes up? What if I try to reduce the labor? What happens if I added a second shift? And so these are things that we can do to bring people along, because then we'll say, like, well, this is what the future looks like. And so these visualizations can help too for people that don't understand what the future looks like. And I think Melissa also talked about in the previous session about, making construction cool again. And so, our folks, they taught it at Virginia Tech last year, and we're thinking about, now we've got, requests to, roll this out to other places, because it is pretty cool if you can think about what does this look like. And owners are saying, like, hey, I'm going to give this contractor a big order. Can you go verify that they can really deliver on this? Because I don't really have a good method for doing that. So that's another application for the ICMA, is to use it as like kind of a supply chain screening tool, so that.
And if I've been working on that with you guys, then I should know pretty clearly what I can handle as throughput for my production line. I go, okay, maybe I need to double it. And I can stand in front of you or that client and say, here's the math. Pretty simple. I can handle that quantity. Let's party.
That's awesome. It goes from, that's a good problem to have and we'll figure that out later to like really having a production system that can deliver on it.
Yeah. A deliberate yes.
Yeah, right.
Is always pretty good, right?
Yeah, we should be closing the gap between the promise makers and the promise keepers, right? I mean, that's the goal.
And going back to that question you asked me about what are some of the ways that we're connecting data and processes internally here to understand, and I'm saying I'm looking at leading indicators. And one of the things we need to do is make sure the promise makers on the business development side,
That's good.
because as you stand in front of clients, you have to be able to tell them, I can meet that schedule. And if you could stand in front of them and you could hold up that piece of paper or that image or, this is how I'm telling you I can meet that demand.
Right.
That's a real promise. That's a heck of a thing.
It is good. We just have to make sure that there's something behind those saloon doors on the movie front,
Here's a blank sheet of paper.
No. I know we've been making promises and I think that most of them are in good faith.
Yeah.
But let's back that up with data. Let's back it up with processes.
Real process.
Yeah. Standard work, good documentation.
Yeah, I think the other benefit of that is we all know in construction the demand fluctuates constantly, right? It's always swinging up and down, up and down. Well, imagine if you knew what the perfect number was for demand and you could fill that pipeline for the next 3 years and it's the same number every week, every month, so that demand is consistent for your team. Think about the headaches that would remove for so many people to just be stable.
Yeah.
And to put another spin on that, if we had a clearly communicated growth strategy and we knew that in 6 months we needed to be at a slightly higher level and at 12 months a little bit more, because most companies are looking to grow. But again, if you have that discipline and that data there, that makes it a more realistic and grounded discussion.
Yeah.
Well, since we don't have a part 3 scheduled, it may come up, but any final comments, and Melissa, you're still here as well, just shout it at us and we'll repeat it into the mics, from the ICG folks, kind of about what you do, and more maybe just the future construction that you'd like to chime in on.
Yeah. I think, you guys talked about something earlier. What's it going to mean when we're not saying industrialized construction anymore? It's just construction. And I just want to say that we have some amazing people in this industry with such different backgrounds, and we solve really hard problems every single day. And I think that the point when we just say construction will be when we've solved problems that, automotive manufacturing never had to solve. And I believe that we're capable of doing that.
There it is. Gauntlet thrown down.
Yeah.
We can be better than automotive
Absolutely.
manufacturing.
It'll take a little time, but I believe in us.
I'm with you. Let's get it done. Nick,
Well,
any
that's
last
a tough
thoughts?
act to follow. Thank you. I guess I'd say that I think you need to look at your org chart and say, do I have roles that are aligned with IC? Do I understand what those roles are? And if I don't have them, then how am I going to fill them? And can I go find people within my organization that have real ambition to find a new skill level? Because I know that they're out there because we see them, but I don't think we're good at sourcing the right level of talent within our own organization. And I think within the organization too, we have to make it cool to be in these roles. So for field people, probably still the top of the mountain is to be a general foreman out in the field. I got 200 guys on the field and all that kind of stuff. And so we have to make being a team leader and being a plant manager as cool and make that a thing. So, our relationships with the unions and other folks that are providing labor, they have to do a job with us at that too. We can do a lot on our own, but we have to create the right structures too. So some of this is really just structural, and we also need these other methods that Allison's been teaching us about.
Love it. I'm going to say we need a part 3. I don't quite know what the subject matter is yet, but let's
the acronyms that Nick threw out. We're just going to go through all those.
We should actually have an in-depth notes sheet for folks to study prior to watching the episode.
Scratching the surface.
Oh, I got acronyms for days.
Oh my God, I was in the Navy too. We're just getting started.
But no, deeply and truly, thank you so much for being here and talking a little bit about what you guys do. I hope that it generates some questions and comments from other folks. And with that said, if folks want to put things in the comments and ask questions, we'll schedule a part 3 and we'll tuck in deeper to some of those comments. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
And let's sign off for today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
All 3.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.